Everyone. Hello, everyone. Come on in. Come on in. The verdict is in. Come on in. We're going to talk about it. I'm just now getting back home. Like the video as you guys come in. Subscribe to the page. Are you guys surprised? What do you think? And do you think that's what the reaction was yesterday and them not finding him guilty on that larger charge? And he possibly might have knew that yesterday. Let's get into the disclaimer. Let's talk. Many people are live. We're going to get into what's being talked about in the news, in the media. A lot of people are live right now at the courthouse. I think a lot of people are in shock. So we're showing you basically what's being talked about. I'm going to go ahead and get in my disclaimer. It's going to take people a few minutes to get in here because there is so many people live. So it's going to take a minute, but that's okay. I just got to get in here, get to my disclaimer, and kind of talk to you guys about what's being talked about. And then, of course, we'll have people break down what this means. And I think I think his attorney wanted him to hopefully be released, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So let me get to my disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships and research. Fair use is use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All comments are alleged, in our opinion, and for entertainment purposes only. Hi, it's funny because I switched tablets. I can't see your comments on the tablet I'm on. I can see your comment on here, Paris. So thank goodness I got this going. Hi, how are you? Oh, I can see it now. Okay, that works. Yeah, let's get into what the news is saying. Are you surprised? I am. So, found not guilty on 3 charges and found guilty on 2 charges. So, we're going to get straight into it. Okay, so that's why we can see that that's been corrected. I appreciate it. We're going to get to the news. I was actually out and about, and I almost went further. But then I turned on my phone. You know me. I turned on my phone, and it showed that the verdict was in. I was like, hold up. I got to go home. So what I do for y'all, man? Yeah, Paris, this is a new thing. We're going to talk about that. More people are coming in. This is a new thing where it's like a crown and number 1. I've never really seen that. It's on my side saying top something. Let me see what it do if I hit it. Let me see. I don't know. But yeah, I was gonna pin you if it allowed me to pin you, but I don't want to mess up something because I don't know what I'm doing on this side regarding that. But people were telling me earlier today they can see the crown in the number 1. Maybe that you're the number 1 in here. Okay, so let's get to the verdict, you guys. Many people are surprised. And then you can kind of see, and I'm kind of glad. I apologize. I'm kind of glad it's a little blurry. And let me tell you why. There's certain words that cannot be stated on YouTube. So you can see the counts, you can see them, but you can't really understand what they are. And I'm okay with it being a little blurry because of YouTube guidelines. So you can see where it says not guilty, not guilty, guilty, not guilty. And just go look up the counts and, they'll kind of go through it, but at least you can see it. But since YouTube is very sensitive, certain words would have got me in trouble. So we're okay that it's a little blurry, but many people are feeling that he beat the feds. Do you feel that he beat the feds? Do y'all feel that he beat the feds? And I'm going to move this back again. And maybe. So yeah, we're going to get into the video, guys, so they can tell us what all this means. And like I said, his lawyers want to try and get him release. I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to break down what all this means and what the time means with all the counts. So let's go ahead and get to it while I finish doing this. Like the video as you guys come in. Like it.
which lists the charges, proven, not proven, the predicate crimes, and whether Sean
Good
Combs
afternoon,
is not
everyone.
guilty or guilty. On count one, the racketeering conspiracy.
I know it's been happening, I think, since yesterday. Crown 1, sometimes people get Crown 1, sometimes people get Crown 2. I don't know. It's the first time. I don't even think I've seen it in other people's chats. I don't know if because we hit a certain milestone. We're almost at 40K. Oh, we did hit 39K, Paris. We did hit 39K yesterday. So I'm proud of that. But yeah, this is a new thing I'm seeing. I think it started happening yesterday or today. So yeah, let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Charge, Sean Combs has been found not guilty of racketeering conspiracy, perhaps the most complicated charge for the jury to understand. The count one had provided for a number of predicate acts, but the jury does not have to get into that because they have found Sean Combs not guilty of leading a criminal enterprise, not guilty of racketeering conspiracy. They will now move to the other 4 counts, 2 of them on sex trafficking and on... And we have not guilty now on count 2, which was sex trafficking of Cassandra Ventura. Sean Combs has been found not guilty of sex trafficking when it comes to his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. There was a real debate that the jury heard over the course of the last 2 months about consent and coercion and the complications of deciding when an 11-year relationship between Combs and Cassie Ventura may have become a criminal one. And the jury decided it was not criminal sex trafficking when Sean Combs committed what his attorneys freely admitted was domestic abuse, as you saw in that video. He has been found not guilty now on racketeering conspiracy, not guilty on sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura. He has been found guilty on count 3, transportation for the purposes of prostitution. He has also been found guilty on count 5, transportation for the purposes of prostitution. These charges carry a maximum penalty of up to 10 years in prison, so we do have a split verdict. Sean Combs has been found not guilty of racketeering conspiracy, not guilty of sex trafficking Cassandra Ventura, but he has been found guilty on 2 counts of transportation for the purposes of prostitution, and we're waiting for 1 more count, the sex trafficking of Jane. And just now the jury has decided that Sean Combs is not guilty of sex trafficking his former girlfriend who testified under the pseudonym Jane.
So yeah, maybe it is interaction.
Believed that the relationships that Sean Combs had with his former girlfriends Cassie Ventura and a woman who testified under the pseudonym Jane were not criminal, did not involve sex trafficking. All Sean Combs has been convicted of here is...
Well, this is going to be funny, Paris, because me and you interact more than anybody in the chat. Anybody can become a member. Anybody can send super chats. But that kind of works in your favor, Paris, because me and you interact and I'm always looking at your comments. So it makes it almost better for me. Real talk. It makes it better for me. You know what I'm saying? Hey, I can see you even better. Other than to see the Paris and the wrench, I can see the interaction of the crown. But that works. Yeah. Okay. So let's continue. They're breaking it down in regards to the count. Like I said, you guys, I'm kind of happy that it's slightly blurry, but you can see where it's not guilty, not guilty, guilty, not guilty. And he's breaking down each count.
Transportation for the purposes of prostitution. And Kira, those did seem to be the most evident crimes that Sean Combs committed. We heard testimony from the male escorts. The jury heard about the cash that they were paid. And as prosecutors told them, they were not in those hotel rooms for scintillating conversation. Sean Combs guilty of transportation for the purposes of prostitution, not guilty of racketeering conspiracy, not guilty of sex trafficking. Kira?
All right, let's put this in perspective now that we know where Sean Combs has been found guilty and non-guilty. Let's put into perspective, Brian, on...
It seems, Paris, later in the chat, it kind of calmed down, and I don't remember seeing them because I was live for about an hour. I don't recall seeing them after that hour. I think maybe it's within the first, maybe, I don't know how long, but I think it veered off as time went on. Yeah. Paris said competition. You're so funny. Okay, so let's continue. In regards to his counts, not guilty on 3, guilty on 2. Let's continue.
Time he will serve. What are we looking at now with regard to years of court?
Now he's going to talk about the time possibly served. Let's get to it.
First, we should point out there will be an appeal. He's got plenty of money to do that, but let's take it from where it stands right now.
Kira, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this. I'm not even sure if I would say there would be an appeal, because for Sean Combs and his defense team, this is a massive win. 3 of the counts that had a life sentence possibility are gone. When it comes to transportation to engage in prostitution, the minimum is nothing. There's a theoretical possibility that he walks out on probation. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No, but the max is 10 years. Even if you were to take both sentences, and he's not going to get 10 years, they're going to look at his criminal history, mitigating circumstances, aggravating circumstances, and I would assume that he gets somewhere in the middle ground, maybe like 3 to 5 years, 3 to 6 years, possible through that sentencing range for each count. Sean Combs going to trial where he was facing life and being able to walk out with something under 10 years, well under 10 years possibly, that is a victory.
Yeah, it is.
Appeal, sure, that's his right to do so, but
are you surprised, Paris? Are you surprised, or do you think that the jury just wanted to get out of there and enjoy their holiday, and they're just sick of it? Especially since yesterday they were asked to come back, and they were like, you know, here it is, and they were asked to come back. Let's continue. Are you guys surprised? Yeah, that's what that guy said. But many people were saying, even though his attorneys are asking for that, you know, he's guilty on other charges. So let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. That's his thoughts.
I don't see an appeal here. I think you take this as a win. You serve the few years that you may get, and you'd be happy that you didn't get life. I'm somewhat shocked as to the trafficking for Cassie. I thought that might have been a stronger case for the government. I didn't think that they had the Rico, and I definitely didn't think they had the Jane trafficking. But my
mouth was on the floor too, because I was literally about to go like 30 minutes, an hour away, and then it's like I turned around and said I got to get home.
This is, I think it only so many words, and I keep saying it. I think this is a positive result for Sean Combs and his team.
I'm being told now Combs is hugging his lawyer at this very moment. Clearly, he's seeing it as you are seeing it as well. You know, we should point out, Brian, let's look at bigger picture here. He is a music producer. He created a brand around himself. He was a big part of bringing hip hop into the mainstream. There is an entire entertainment business side to this. How do you see, from your experience, this win, as you are saying, for Sean Combs? How will it impact his business empire?
I think, for lack of a better term, there's always going to be a blemish on Sean Combs' career. I think people are going to look at this in 2 different ways. In one way, they're going to say that Sean Combs probably had a history of getting into trouble with the law and somehow getting out from underneath it. They're going to look at past events through both civil and criminal complaints and say, you know what, he's always had good lawyers or whatever it may be, and he's gotten away with bad charges, especially looking at that Intercontinental video. But I think the other view of this is going to be is that he was tried by a jury of his peers. All of the information, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between was shown to these 12 people, and they did not see the criminal enterprise. They did not see the force, fraud, and coercion. And I think the trafficking to engage in prostitution, I think that's going to be a lighter blemish on his career in terms of the totality of what we saw, to like, okay, so he paid for people to go across state lines to have consensual sex. And consensual sex will be a big part of the conversation based on how the verdict came out. And so, do I think he takes a big knock in terms of this case? Yes, but we've seen Sean Combs rebrand and come back from a lot of things, and that is a possibility here.
But let's put it into the context, Aaron Katursky, of the Me Too movement. I don't think anybody can forget the video, the surveillance video that we saw over and over again in that hotel hallway of Sean Combs barely naked in a towel, kicking and dragging Cassie Ventura.
It's an unforgettable piece of video, and it was one of the most visceral pieces of evidence that the jury saw during the course of a nearly 2-month trial, Kira. And the defense really admitted what's depicted on it is domestic violence, but they said all along he's not charged with domestic violence. The defense insisted, even though the defense did not put on much of a case, called no witnesses, that what was depicted was not sex trafficking, and the jury seems to have agreed. And Sean Combs is clearly taking this outcome of a split verdict, guilty on only the transportation for the purposes of prostitution charges. As a win, the jury has been excused. As the 8 men and 4 women stood to leave their seats, Sean Combs made praying hands in their direction and bowed his head slightly as if to say thank you when the outcome...
Yeah, 2 counts out of 5. And maybe, remember how there was interaction between the attorneys and the jurors? And maybe that's why there was a reaction yesterday that he might have known that they weren't going to do count 1. Count 1 was where people were like, if he gets that, that's possible life, 15 years of life. But when he knew that he wasn't getting count 1, he was probably so happy and thankful for that. And then he was thinking the other counts, okay, but at least it's not 1.
was read aloud in court. Combs put his hands in the air and looked to the ceiling, clearly taking this as a win that he was acquitted on the most serious charges he faced, Kira.
And now I understand, Aaron, his attorneys are calling for him to actually be released today. Could that happen?
Well, it could happen because he has already served about a year's time, a little shy of a year, and there will be a sentencing date. What the defense is likely arguing is that he is now no longer has anything to do with a violent crime. Transportation for the purposes of prostitution carries a maximum sentence of 10 years, a minimum of nothing. So it will be up to the judge to decide. But where he is no longer accused of a violent crime, the defense may have a good case to get him released until he is formally sentenced. If that happens, it's possible he could walk right out the golden doors here. Certainly a number of his supporters and others are waiting. Members of his family were certainly elated. They were not allowed to show any emotion, but they are remaining in the courtroom to see what happens, what the judge ultimately decides, Kira.
Brian, your thoughts on the fact that he could be released today?
So at the beginning of this case, when Sean Combs was charged with sex trafficking, that is a charge that has the assumption that someone should be held pending prosecution. That assumption is gone now because he's been found not guilty of those two charges. And to piggyback off what Aaron is saying, the severity of his punishment has greatly decreased. He's no longer looking at life. He's looking at a max of 10 years on each count. Some of that time he's already served while waiting for this case. Mark Ignifilo, the defense attorney who's leading this case, has said that his private plane is in Maui. He has no access to it. So he's hinting at the idea of a number of things that a judge will consider when thinking about bail. Is this person a flight risk? How serious of a sentence are they looking at? And flight risk goes into two portions. The actual ability to fly and not come back to the jurisdiction, but also the likelihood of doing that. A person who's facing life, more likely to be a flight risk. A person who's just beaten 3 of the 5 top counts in a trial like this and is only facing 10 years, far less of a flight risk. And so while I think it's somewhat of a Hail Mary for him to be released today, this is the strongest possible outcome that he could have had to make this argument. And I think the defense has a leg to stand on in making this argument that Sean Combs should be released pending the sentence.
Let me ask you, Brian, because you and I were talking for days about the videos, the just how explicit they were, how Sean Combs treated these women, listening to Cassie Ventura break down on the stand, listening to other women, former girlfriends, talk about the way he treated women. I brought this question to Aaron, but I want to ask you as well, as someone who's an attorney, someone who has been in the courtroom for cases that involve domestic violence, knowing what we know about what happened and how he treated these women, and now looking at this outcome, how he's been acquitted on the most serious charges, your overall thoughts.
Thanks, Paris.
Moving forward about what this says about the Me Too movement, the power of a music mogul.
Yeah, you guys, we got 2 likes. Please get the likes up. Please get the likes up. Please double tap the screen. There's about 92 in the building. Please double tap the screen. Let's get the likes up so we can continue. Thank you, Paris. I appreciate that. You know, here I am. I'm looking and I'm trying to figure out. I think I'm shocked. I'm reading their comments. Let's get the likes up, you guys. If you're watching from a phone, double tap the screen, please. Double tap the screen, please. And thank you. Let's continue.
When he has money, when he has fame. Your thoughts?
So my thoughts, I think, I try to go beyond just being an attorney. And I'll try to sidestep that and just talk as a man, as an adult. I think there can be no mixing of words as to what Sean Combs is when it comes to the treatment of women. Full stop, period. There's no question as to what we saw in terms of the strength of the women who took the stand and testified about the abuse that happened to them. There's no question about the photos we saw of Cassie in terms of the bruising of her body, the bruising of her face, and the violence in that Intercontinental Hotel. Full stop. There's no justification of that. There's no explanation of that. And I think in terms of the Me Too movement, there should be strength in the fact that those women were believed in terms of what they said. Putting my attorney hat back on for a moment, I think the difficulty of this and what may be perceived, and I hope it's a perception and not a reality, of the Me Too movement taking a step back based on this verdict, I think it comes from the overreaching of the government in this case, of trying to fit the allegations of this case.
Do you think that the jurors really felt this way, or do you think that the jurors was just over it? If this was last week of them trying to make a decision not near the holiday, maybe that was plot plan too. I'm not going to let this transfer over into my holiday. They were saying something about possibly Thursday. The court's really supposed to be closed, but they would open it for the jurors. Think about that. Think about it. He kept pressing. It needs to be before the 4th. And then them saying, if we have to come back Monday, the jurors is like, no, we not, nope, we're going to get back to our life. We're over it. So if everything would have been different and all this happened last week, this might be totally different. And depending on what they felt yesterday, because remember, they had talked about 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we're hearing that it's 1, 2, and 3. So did they change from going home last night? Possibly. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Into a Rico conspiracy made it that much less palatable for the jury to...
And did some of those people really watch the video of Gina saying, no, I was fine. I wasn't in any situations with him. You never know. And then allegedly, I watched the TMZ video, and there was a lady that's allegedly watching the daughters. She spoke out on TMZ. So did TMZ help push the narrative? Maybe. Go look at the video. There's a lady sitting there talking about Diddy, how he's been through stuff. There's a lady that's talking about Diddy. She has a bang, longer black hair, whatever. And then Gina did a video. She was shopping. Remember? Gina was shopping. And TMZ interviewed her briefly. And she said, no, I'm fine. So all of a sudden, Gina's not MIA. All of a sudden. And she didn't have to take the stand. So now that they feel that he hasn't really allegedly done anything violent, will he get released until his court hearing? We'll see. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. Interesting, though.
True. And I think that might have also affected, in some way, shape, or form, the trafficking as well. I'll be honest.
So does that go with people saying, was he a assistant of? And people are saying he beat the feds. Was he? And that's why they're saying, okay. Or is it because he paid all them lawyers all that money? And then what does that mean for the civil suits? And this is the biggest thing. Since count 1 didn't hit, they're not going to be able to go after his money either. Let's continue. See, that's what people are wondering. Fair use reaction clip. Did they get what they wanted? They took all that stuff out of his house. Think about it. How is this case about 50% about Cassie and the other women, and it's not about what the driver saw, what the bodyguard saw, what KK saw? Think about it. Think about it. You know what I'm saying? People were like, how is she not taking the stand? How are they not forcing Gina to take the stand? We talked about that, y'all. Yes, we did. So it is what it is, but people side-eyed this case and how it was handled. And his side, his attorneys are probably happy about how Gina was MIA, KK didn't take the stand. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. Be nice in the comments, you guys. Yep, we talked about the distractions, questionable things, why allegedly they missed the house, why allegedly they didn't cover the basement. There's a lot of stuff we side-eye. And then we kept talking about Gina. Gina, where's Gina? Where's Gina? Gina is MIA. And then as soon as the jury gets their instructions and start deliberating, she do a video with TMZ. You got to watch certain media. We kind of side-eye. And then they sometimes push a narrative sometimes. Allegedly, let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. Are y'all surprised that there's 3 counts of not guilty and 2 on guilty? Are y'all surprised? Let me know in the comments.
I'm somewhat shocked that they did not find Sean Combs guilty of trafficking Cassie because of the violence there. But I think that they made a mistake of not understanding the difference between a brutal domestic violence relationship in which Sean Combs participated in and was in many regards an aggressor of, if not the absolute aggressor of, and trafficking. And I think the overreach and misapplication of what 12 people in the Southern District of New York, or what society would believe to be trafficking in RICO, that misstep and misperception is what led the SDNY here. The SDNY has phenomenal prosecutors, has a phenomenal office, and their record speaks for itself. But I think in this case, they overestimated the strength of their case, and this is what happens when a jury speaks.
Aaron, outside court, tell us about who you're seeing. How big of a crowd is it? The sense of the support, if indeed he does walk out of those golden doors, as you said, the type of support he will receive.
And this is the other thing. What will happen in regards to the civil suits? Will they move forward if he stays in jail, or will some of them withdraw if he's released into the court hearing? Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Well, out here now, Kira, there are, of course, a number of reporters, a number of bloggers who have been following the trial, curious onlookers, tourists, those in the park across the street doing their morning workout. But everyone is certainly curious whether Sean Combs is going to walk out those golden doors released on bail. His defense attorney, Mark Agnifilo, told the judge a moment ago Combs would be willing to put up $1 million bail to assure that he shows up.
Wow.
His sentencing, federal prosecutors just opposed his release on bail, saying that he has committed a litany of crimes and there's no reason to believe he would do anything different if he is released now. Federal prosecutors believe Sean Combs still represents a danger and a risk of flight from justice. They point to the physical.
There's 11 on this side. You guys, stop playing with me. We got to get the likes up. We have 11. We have 149 in the building. Let's continue with the content. Let's get the likes up. Please double tap the screen. 11 likes. Please double tap the screen. If you're watching from a phone, please double tap the screen to get the likes up. Let's get the likes to 100. Please. There's 142 in the building. Let's get the likes up so we can get back to the content. Y'all did pretty good this morning. Let's get the likes up. It's a quick double tapping of the screen. It lets everybody know we're live. It helps in regards to the algorithm. Yeah, give the girl some love. Last night I was live. I was live this morning. And you know me, Paris. If I'm watching stuff and it's not making no sense to me, I'd be like, stop playing. Let me go live. Let me find somebody that's going to tell my people what's going on. So last night we really got into the questions. If he was guilty, where would he go? What's happening as they're deliberating? He's pulled from the back. Then he comes in. He's a part of the conversation. We went through a lot last night. A lot. Paris, that video last night, baby. That video last night, Paris. Oh my goodness. I think that was my highest. Let me tell you what it was. Let me look it up. The video from last night got 68K. Live for 2 hours last night. 68K. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's continue. Let's see where the likes at. 19. Let's get the likes up, you guys. Thank you. Continue. Just double tap the screen. Let's go. Let's continue.
Violence, even though he was not found guilty of sex trafficking nor charged with any physical violence. They say he has shown a predilection to committing physical violence, as the defense readily admitted. So prosecutors are opposed.
No, you're okay. That's okay. Enjoy your time. You know, we all need it. Just like I was saying, I was literally about to go our way today, and then I had to turn around, come back. So yeah, enjoy your time. This morning I did a video, and then I just did a video just now. So enjoy your time. You know, happy birthday to whomever it is. Let's continue.
His release on bail, the judge is going to take a moment to decide.
Brian, your thoughts? Is Sean Combs a risk?
So the question is, a risk of what? Right?
Yeah, we both be busy.
Sean Combs to be around any girlfriends or women right now? No.
So happy birthday to you or the family member.
Show that he is a toxic individual who could be very violent towards women. But if you're asking me as to whether or not he's a risk to not come back to court to be sentenced, maybe it's my bias as a defense attorney, and looking at this verdict now, I do not believe he's a risk to not come back to court. I think if anything, he is elated. He is happy. He's excited to come back to court to formulate the best argument for sentencing. And yes, he might spend some years in prison, but the amount of time that he would spend is far less than if he fled and never came back. And he has children here. He has enterprises here. He has at least 60 civil lawsuits that he has to fight. He has, in my mind, and maybe I'm making too strong an application as a defense attorney, he has far more reasons to stay here and fight now after this verdict than to flee and never come back. And so, do I think he's going to get released? Probably not. That's a high bar to overcome, and I don't think the judge will allow that. But I think there is a very valid and strong argument that he is not a flight risk, and I think there's a possibility, albeit very small, that he walks out of those golden doors.
And Aaron, from what I understand, the judge has now said he is going to take his time to consider if indeed Sean Combs will be released today or not.
He will give a decision today, Kira, but the government...
So this is the biggest thing. I want to hear from the jurors, whether they do a group interview, an individual interview, or if they write a book. And if they tell us yesterday was different than today? That's what we definitely need to hear. Did they go home and feel like, wow, I'm going home. He should have the ability at some point to go home. We shouldn't give him life. And the judge could have kept them there longer yesterday, but he was saying, nope, I don't want y'all to feel that y'all have to be, pressed to make a decision that other people are making. So let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
And defense attorneys are asking for a period of hours so they can write letters, make their arguments on both sides. So it could be quite a while before the judge decides whether Sean Combs deserves to be released on bail. The government is making the case that he still faces up to 20 years in prison after his conviction on the 2 transportation for the purposes of prostitution charges. But the jury has cleared him of the most serious charges of sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy that could have sent him to prison for life.
Brian, how do you think, what was it that defense lawyers did? What was it that they said? What was it that they had that you think helped deliver a victory for their client?
I think the case against Sean Combs was the first time, at least in me covering the Harvey Weinstein trial, where I was sitting in court, the R. Kelly trial, where I was sitting in court, and many of the cases that I think we would associate with the Me Too movement, where the defense was willing to say, my client is indefensible in some of his actions. That what he did and what you saw is wrong, but making the very strong distinction and walking the very tightrope of saying what he did wrong and what he's being accused of are 2 different things. What we've seen of people in the past of saying, well, they're all lying, you can't trust these women, you can't believe them. I think that's not a way to handle these cases. And I think what the defense did well is in talking to the human aspect of these are very messy relationships. That Sean Combs is an abuser. And Mark Kniffelow said it himself. If Sean Combs was accused of domestic violence, there would not be a trial because he would plead guilty. Do I think that's a bit of showmanship? Yes. Do I think that would actually be true? Maybe not. But I think arguing it nonetheless in front of a jury and admitting to some of the bad facts and trying to parse through it all, I think it gave them credibility to get to this verdict.
Let's bring in our Bernardo Villalona, who's been also with us as an attorney, as a contributor here at ABC News. You and I have been talking every day for months now about this case, Bernardo. I asked Brian this question as an attorney who has been involved with domestic violence cases. I want to ask you as well your thoughts on what this means for the victims.
For the victims, I think this is a slap in the face for the victims. I think this is going to deter victims from coming forward and telling their story and being the voice for the voiceless in the sense of representing other victims that are not willing to come forward. I know that for a fact, I'm sure that the prosecution right now is very upset with this verdict because they definitely put a lot of time into this prosecution, into this investigation. And they also did a lot of comforting of trying to give strength to these women, to Jane and to Cassie, to come forward, to show their face, to share their story. And this is not just like any other regular domestic violence case or just any type of abuse case. You're dealing that they were stepping forward to speak against a music mogul, a person who had the key to New York City, one of the most powerful people in the industry. So just think of how scared they were to come forward and to tell their story and scared of what could happen once they came forward. Because I'm sure with social media and people talking in the news that they have received a lot of threats and people commenting about who they are and what they've done and that they are liars. But they and they alone know what happened to them. And they had prosecutors that believed in them and believed their story and became their voice.
Okay, you guys, go check out, when this video's over, go check out one of my short. I think there's a lady not by the name of Emily. She had stated to the jurors, basically like, think about this could be you, and the feds is trying to tell you what to do with your life. And then the judge has said, you can't say that, you can't direct like that, but the thought is already in the jurors' minds. There's a short that I did in regards to how his attorney spoke to the jury a few days ago. And it made her question, will that stick in their head? Because he's saying disregard it, but why are you telling me to disregard it? And should I really be listening? Go watch that short. It's very interesting because there's certain people that I listen to, they're very keen on stuff. So that being what it was said, maybe that was what they were saying. Well, hey, I should be able to do what I want in my own house. And if the women are saying, let's meet, no, maybe not. Okay, and then there's people that are constantly going to interact with them. That's interesting. So now watching her video, it could be anything. It could be anything. That it could be that because of the holiday. It could be that how his family is there. It could be that this is just how they feel, and they have a right to make a decision, and they've made it. Fair use reaction clip.
Aaron, I understand court has now been adjourned. Combs was escorted out. A massive applause was heard from within the courtroom.
Well, his attorneys are trying to get him out today, and then they'll probably tell him when he has to return for the ones that he is guilty on. So his lawyers are working on can he get him out, and then they'll decide when he has to come back for the guilty part. Fair use reaction clip.
The judge said court is adjourned for now, Kira. He's going to give the parties until 1 p.m. Eastern time to submit letters arguing for or against his release on bail. The judge left the bench until later on this afternoon when he'll give his decision. Once the judge was off the bench, Sean Combs was escorted out by the marshals. The judge told him he's going to have to cool his heels in the courthouse for a bit. But as he left the courtroom, there were applause from the gallery, some cheers in the gallery where members of his family have been in steadfast vigil. His mother here most days, his twin daughters back, his sons have been here most days. They cheered for their father after he was acquitted of the most serious charges that he faces, still convicted of transportation for the purposes of prostitution. And now we await the decision as to whether he's going to be released on bail. If he is, he will walk out to a crowd that includes people holding up Sean John t-shirts and other supporters who have been here saying, "Where's the Rico?" They've been shouting that into the street for weeks, and they would certainly welcome this verdict if he is to walk out those golden doors, Kira. For the jury, they really had to make a difficult decision, not just on the racketeering conspiracy, but as the defense said, the women that Combs was accused of trafficking were also his long-term girlfriends.
Good
Cassie Ventura
afternoon,
with him for 11
Scotland.
years, Jane with him for more than 3 years, and the defense tried to argue that they were
Good afternoon,
consensual
Texas.
relationships, that they were in it just as much as he was because that was their lifestyle, even though they freely admitted the polyamorous swingers kink was not everybody's cup of tea. But he said these women were in it, and it required the jury to make distinctions between consent and coercion and love and control and free will, and in the end, they acquit on the most serious charges that carried him up.
Okay, let's talk about this. Remember in alleged Gina's interview? Remember what she said? I'm wondering if Gina, if she would have took the stand, if they would have showed the interview she had did, and if that would have swayed. Because remember, he didn't want situations to be parallel. Okay, Cassie, Jane Doe. But it seems as if, you know what I'm saying, stuff was held over the head. But if Gina would have took, in regards to her alleged comments and that interview trended. That interview just went live again from TK. She just reposted it a week or two ago. Yeah, she posted it. So now she's on TMZ saying, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm not MIA. I'm fine. Things are fine. He never did anything to me, was what she said. That could have did it. The TMZ interview with Gina yesterday could have did it. Who knows? The jury has the right to make a decision, and what they had in front of them, they made a decision. Fair use reaction clip. You guys, let's get the likes up. Still 23. 23 likes. Let's get the likes up. There's 123 in the building, so we should have 100 people double tapping the screen. Can we get 100 people to please double tap the screen? 23 likes. Can we get 100 people to double tap that screen to hit the like? Or hit the thumbs up above the video, below the video. If you're watching from a phone, press 1. All you have to do is double tap the screen. Yes, 24 likes. Let's go. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. When the jurors have their interviews, or if they write a book, I'm very interested in what they experience. Is it because it was hot? They're frustrated, uncomfortable. Fair use reaction clip.
A minimum sentence of 15 years, acquitting on sex trafficking in addition to the racketeering conspiracy, Kira.
Bernard, I want to bring you back in on that. As Aaron was saying, this really came down to violence and fear versus love, infidelity, and jealousy. We are watching the doors now to see if lawyers will be coming out and coming to the mics. But Bernarda, Sean Combs may be acquitted of the most serious charges here. But let's talk about the impact all of this will have on ongoing civil cases.
Yes, so you have to think, so even though
Good question in regards to the civil cases. Let's listen in. Thanks for being here, everyone.
he was acquitted of the most serious charge in this criminal case. When we're talking about a civil case, it's a different burden. The criminal case is beyond a reasonable doubt. When you're dealing with civil cases, it's by preponderance of the evidence, 51% versus 49%. But then again, with a civil case, he's just at risk of losing his empire in terms of money, but his liberty is no longer at stake. So he can live to fight those cases outside of jail bars.
You bring up a good point, because if he would have been found guilty of racketeering, that could have forced him to forfeit all his businesses, right?
Absolutely. So if he would have been found guilty of racketeering, conspiracy, and of the sex trafficking, anything that was used in order to facilitate this crime. So, for example, his mansions in Florida and his mansion in Los Angeles would have been at risk that it would have been taken away from the government, since there was evidence that was put forth having to deal with that some of the sex trafficking took place inside of those homes. So he would have been at risk of losing that, and also a lot of his businesses and his money.
In his closing argument, one of Combs' defense attorneys asked jurors to summon the courage to acquit Combs, who conceded he could be violent, jealous, and a drug user, but whose lawyers argued the case is badly exaggerated to make Combs like something he is not. Do you think that's what happened, Brian Buckmeyer?
I don't know. This one I'm still trying to wrap my mind around, and I apologize. I'm trying to get information from different people as I go about this, trying to get information from people inside the court. I think, let me try to put it into words. I think when it comes to this case, this might have been more about how the case was handled than the actual people who testified. I could see how this might be an indictment on the women who testified, and I would say, as someone who watched them, I don't think it should be. I think, if anything, this is about how the case was handled by the government in terms of how they argued it, how they presented it, and the people that were selected. People even selected being the jurors, not the team themselves. And so I think as we move forward with this case and we see what's going to happen, because there is a possibility, although small, that Sean Combs walks out today, I think we just take stock of what we heard, what was argued, and what the result was, and not lay this at the feet of anyone who testified.
And now I understand, Aaron, a statement has been given on behalf of Cassie Ventura, star witness in this case. What are you learning?
Her attorney, Doug Wigdor, just sent us the following statement. This entire criminal process started when our client, Cassie Ventura, had the courage to file her civil complaint in November 2023. And Kira, we should say that's true. The criminal investigation is largely based on the statements in Cassie Ventura's lawsuit, and intensified, of course, once video from the 2016 hotel security camera became public. The statement from Doug Wigdor, her attorney, goes on to say, although the jury did not find Combs guilty of sex trafficking Cassie beyond a reasonable doubt, she paved the way for a jury to find him guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution. By coming forward with her experience, Cassie's attorney, Doug Wigdor, goes on to say, Cassie has left an indelible mark on both the entertainment industry and the fight for justice. We must repeat with no reservation that we believe and support our client, who showed exemplary courage throughout this trial. She testified for 4 days, often quite emotionally so, giving graphic, explicit detail of what she said she was made to do. And Sean Combs did not deny the facts of the freak-offs. Everything that happened in those hotel rooms did not get challenged by the defense. The defense simply saw it differently, as something that went on in a personal, consensual relationship, not sex trafficking. And that's how the outcome is reflected now, Kira.
Bernard, I want to go on to read another part of that statement on behalf of Cassie Ventura's attorney, saying she displayed unquestionable strength and brought attention to the realities of powerful men in our orbit and the misconduct that has persisted for decades without repercussion. This case proved that change is long overdue, and we will continue to fight on behalf of survivors. Two things that stood out to me: powerful men in our orbit and the misconduct that persists, and change that is long overdue. Your thoughts?
Power and money. You can buy yourself out of a conviction. Let's be honest, that if Sean Combs wasn't able to get the team that he got and pay for that defense team and experts and investigators to help defend.
Many people were questioning it. Did he get some favors? Or is it good lawyers? Fair use reaction clip?
Himself, that we would have had a different outcome today. But money and power, that you can still get away with crimes if you have money and power. But I have to say, I was in a courtroom for Cassie's testimony, and she was a strong witness. You can tell that the courage that she had, the strength that she exhibited. I mean, when she spoke and when she would cry from time to time, when she revisited those freak-offs and when she revisited those times when Sean Combs brutally beat her.
And should they have saved the psychologist towards the end of the women speaking? Possibly, because it speaks to what they go through and how they're controlled and what's going on. Remember, they had said they wanted to bring that psychologist back up, and the judge said no. Common sense should have said off after the women testify, that's when you should bring her up. But in their mind, they're thinking after Cassie's strong testimony, that was going to do it. This was 50% of Cassie in the lawsuit. Why was it not about the house? What was found in the house? It was about messages and other stuff. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
And to see her in court sitting down, showing the strength and courage that she was able to overcome this. I think one of the most strongest moments that brought people to tears is when she said at some point that she went home and she told her husband, "You can do this without me," and that she wanted to cross the street and commit suicide because of what she had been through. But I'm glad that Cassie has been able to pick herself up and has been able to move on, taking it day by day, because it does show the strength that she got as a result of coming forward. That coming forward helped to bring closure to her.
Bernarda, thank you. Aaron, getting more insight from Sean Combs inside that courtroom, saying this coming from a journalist in the press room. He was overcome with emotion as the verdict was read. His feet were visibly shaking throughout the reading of the verdict.
He has been an emotional defendant throughout the entire case. In fact, at one point, the judge had to admonish his attorney that Combs was gesturing and trying to make eyes with jurors as if to attempt to influence them when they were hearing certain testimony. And the judge made him sit straight and silent throughout much of the testimony. But as the verdict was being read, he started gesturing. He got down on the floor after it was over to kneel in prayer. Applause broke out into the courtroom. And I'm struck here, the crowd has gathered here outside. And in the windows of the upper floors, courthouse employees are peering down to look at the streetscape below as more people rush toward these doors in anticipation of a possible release on bail sometime later on today, Kira.
And as we wait to hear what the outcome of that is, of course, if indeed the judge decides he could be released today, Brian Buckmeyer, let's talk about the jury makeup here and how it influenced this case, you think. We talked about the fact that it was 8 men, 4 women. Your thoughts on the number of men in this case versus women and how you see that influencing what happened here?
Yes, I know oftentimes when we look at jurors, we look at race or gender. And yes, there's a possibility that the number of men in this case could have been beneficial to Sean Combs in terms of trying to decide what this relationship was like. But I think probably more importantly than race or gender would be age. And the reason why I say that is because when it comes to the conversation as to whether or not these were consensual relationships, which appears to be at the heart of the jury's verdict in terms of saying, yes, we saw that you brought these people across state lines for prostitution, but we don't believe there was force, fraud, or coercion for trafficking, and we don't believe that there was a criminal enterprise or that there was not 2 predicate acts, right? I think a large part of them not believing comes down to consent. And what I find, at least when I talk to a jury, or just talk to people in general, is there's a big divide in terms of what is consent when you talk to someone who is over the age of 40 or 45 and under the age of 40 or 45. And when you have a jury where more than half of them are 51 years to 74 years old, and even if you go even below that, there's a number of people who are in their 40s, I think the conversation and the argument that Mark Agnifilo and his team were having about what it means to consent works for people in that age demographic. I think if we had a jury that was predominantly in their 20s or early 30s, this argument of consent would be very different. So while I do see that there is value in looking at the gender or the sex of the jurors, I think the age told us a lot more based on the arguments we saw.
Bernarda, you think it was smart that Sean Combs did not take the stand?
Absolutely, absolutely. If Sean Combs would have taken the stand, this case would have become a deliberation of whether this jury believed what Sean Combs had to say, whether his demeanor came off as one as credible. Also, you have to think where if Sean Combs were to testify, there was a lot of evidence that the prosecution was not able to get in their case in chief because they were missing a link, and that link would have been Sean Combs. So they would have been able to get that evidence in had Sean Combs testified. So it would have changed the deliberation process, and we would have probably been looking at a completely different verdict. Also, got to think, how would he be able to explain in terms of the brutal beating of Cassie and of Jane on that particular occasion?
Aaron, do you think we'll hear from the family? Sean Combs' mother.
Will we hear from the family? Will we hear from the jurors? And what will the judge decide? Will the judge try and make himself look good and release until his court hearing? Fair use reaction clip. I'm wondering.
Janice was in the courtroom along with his sons, his daughters. Are they expected to speak? Do you think they will speak?
I'm not sure. They haven't yet during the course of this trial, but the cars that they've been using to transport themselves to and from the courthouse are now pulling up to the front here, and they should be walking out those golden doors any moment. They may opt to wait until they know whether Combs is going to get released on bail, as his defense attorney argued he should be. And Combs almost seemed confident that the judge would grant it. He mouthed and said aloud to members of his family in the gallery, "I'm coming home, baby," after the split verdict here, acquitting him of the most serious charges, but finding him guilty of transportation for the purposes of prostitution. And because that is not a violent crime, the defense said that he has earned the right to get released on $1 million bail, as Combs offered to put up.
Aaron, we talk about the support outside of the courthouse there, the cheers that were heard from inside the courtroom. We should point out it's because he had his mom and his kids inside that courtroom. But if you want to talk about people showing up to support Sean Combs throughout all of this, the only celebrity that we witnessed, and correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm speechless too, but kind of not surprised. Because they wanted to make it look like the women were in it for the money, in it for the relationship, and the messages did not help. The messages did not help. They did not. The messages did not help. Real talk. Fair use reaction clip.
Came to show support was Kanye West.
That's right, and what a moment that was. The family now is coming out. You can see the mother of Sean Combs waving and giving a thumbs up. His sons walking out as well. Twin daughters, you can hear perhaps the cheers from some of the supporters, if you can hear them over the...
So the family left the courthouse about an hour ago.
In the courtroom throughout, a few outside, but only Kanye West showed up to court.
Now, I'm wondering when the judge re-deliberates about whether he's going to let him out or not. I'm wondering if the family just took a quick break. But then if the judge makes the decision, I'm wondering if they're going to come back into the courtroom. Because remember, the judge is going to make a decision right around 1:30 or 2. Don't quote me on that. But they might be taking like an hour and a half break. Maybe. Let's see if the family comes back.
And when he walked in his all-white suit, he said he was here to support Sean Combs, but he never saw him. He was not allowed inside the courtroom itself. He watched about 10 minutes of the proceedings inside an overflow room and was in and out of the courthouse in about 20 minutes, and we're not sure whether he was invited or not or showed up of his own volition. There really haven't been that many supporters apart from his family that just left court, as you can see, waving and giving a thumbs up moments ago. Sean Combs has been largely left alone with members of his family, including the mother of at least one of his children. His twin daughters were here at the beginning. They came at the end. His sons were here throughout the case, as was his mother. And when the jury came back stuck yesterday, Combs turned to his mother and said, "It's going to be okay." And today, after the outcome...
50 Cent's already trolling. I'm not going to say what he said. Bootsy already making comments. And then it's basically saying Cassie will continue to fight on behalf of victims. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
He turned to his family and said, "I'm coming home, baby."
Bernard, let me pull something out of what Aaron just said. Sean Combs was largely left alone through all of this. We're talking about somebody that was a huge businessman, a music mogul, a producer, a huge part of making hip hop mainstream. He threw these lavish parties. He was always pointed to at big events and galas. The fact that Aaron said he was largely left alone, what does that tell you?
And he was. I was in a courtroom for the entire trial with the exception of one day. And literally the only person who showed up was Kanye. And the jury didn't get to see Kanye because he was in an overflow room. But in terms of being left alone, Kira, are you surprised? When you look at that video, the Intercontinental video, there's no running from it. And artists and celebrities, they wanted to run away from that because they didn't want to be associated with that type of violence. So it came down to money.
Bernarda, thank you. Aaron, want to take it to you as we reach the top of the hour here. We now wait to see if indeed the judge makes a decision. He says he will make it today if he will allow Sean Combs to be released and walk out those doors behind you.
The judge gave them several hours to make written arguments before he issues a decision on release on bail, but Sean Combs is already celebrating after he was acquitted.
Sorry, Paris, I'm looking down. You good? You good in the comments? You good in the comments? Okay, I hope so. I hope everyone's being kind in the comments. The jury made the decision and people have to respect it. They're the ones that's sitting there listening to the notes, watching tapes, asking for, remember, they asked for Cassie's transcript. And maybe it was the back and forth, or miss you, don't have no, still have love for him. It could have been anything. Oh, okay. Fair use reaction clip.
Of the most serious charges that he faced that could have sent him to prison for life, he was convicted of transporting people for the purposes of prostitution, but taking that as a win, even though in theory he still faces up to 20 years in prison, Kira.
And acquitted of.
And we've said this. Judge will decide later on today if Diddy can be released on bond, on bond, while awaiting his sentencing.
The most serious charges. Bernarda, Brian, Aaron, thank you. We're going to return you now to your regular programming. For some of you, that is Good Morning America. But I do want to tell you about an ABC News special verdict, the Diddy trial, that will air tonight, 10 Eastern. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. The entire team will be here for World News Tonight with David Muir.
Yeah, his family's walking out. Mom holding hands with, hold on, let me see. Mom is holding hands with one of the daughters or a family member. Let me see that again. Hold on. Yeah, it looks like the mom was holding up her hands in celebration. The twins are walking out. Let's see. Mom's walking out. Justin, looks like the son has one of his girlfriends there. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, the mom walks out first. Then one of the sons is behind the mom. I'm not certain if Quincy went first or Quincy's behind everybody. But Quincy's been kind of leading the pack. Okay, and then there's Christian with his girl. Then there's the lady that did the interview with TMZ. So I'm wondering if Quincy was in a different vehicle or if Quincy was first and they just didn't catch it. No, the mom walked out first. Like the video. The family, I get it. The family's happy he's not serving possible life. We get it. It's just interesting.
I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks for staying with us.
Application.
Bootsy's basically saying it's a great day in hip hop.
In terms of trying to dismantle that racketeering conspiracy, that criminal enterprise, where the federal government had their opportunity to take money out of Sean Combs before the civil lawsuits would have had their opportunity. So in a way, Sean Combs may still have enough money in his pocket that those filing civil lawsuits might be able to find a victory through that process. I compare and contrast to, for example, the R. Kelly trial, where he was found.
They're basically showing a picture where he pushed a chair back and kneeled on the floor. It's basically saying Sean Combs kneeled on the floor, appearing to praise in court. Yeah. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Guilty racketeering conspiracy, and there's a forfeiture there. And many of the people filing civil lawsuits against R. Kelly found it difficult to win in those cases.
And I want to bring in Kelly Carter to talk about the cultural impact here, because Kelly, it's hard to understate or overstate, I should say, the role of Sean Combs in music and culture in general. I mean, not only was he a legend in rap music, he was a legend in music in general, as a producer, as an artist, and then on to becoming a businessman with an empire. What does this mean for all that now?
I mean, I think it means a lot. The truth of the matter is that it almost didn't really matter what the outcome.
Let me know in the comments. Do you think that the judge will let him out today? Yes or no? Do you think the judge will let him out today? Let me know in the comments.
Was of this trial. The conversation changes immediately about what his legacy is. You know, this is a person who really touched every corner of pretty much every industry.
If you're just now coming in, you can see not guilty on the first, not guilty on the second, guilty on number 3, not guilty on 4, and guilty on number 5. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Not just music, not just spirits, not just fashion, politics, pretty much every industry he touched. He really ushered the hip hop generation into the mainstream, into commercialism, and made it the billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar industry that it is right now. And I think, you know, regardless of the outcome, it's going to be difficult for people to unhear some of that testimony and certainly unsee, you know, that infamous now intercontinental video that was released with him and Cassie in 2016. And I think that it'll be interesting to see what his life is like as a businessman moving forward, but I don't expect to see something in the immediacy. And I definitely expect us to be dissecting his legacy for a good while now.
And we do have a statement from Cassie Ventura's attorney, Douglas Wigdor. And he says, and I'm quoting here, "This entire criminal process started when our client, Cassie Ventura, had the courage to file her civil complaint in November of 2023. Although the jury did not find Combs guilty of sex trafficking Cassie beyond a reasonable doubt, she paved the way for a jury to find him guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution. By coming forward with her experience, Cassie has left an indelible mark on both the entertainment industry and the fight for justice. We must repeat with no reservation that we believe and support our client, who showed exemplary courage throughout this trial." The statement goes on to talk about her strength on the stand and to talk about the misconduct they say has persisted for decades without repercussion. Bernard, I want to go to you on this point of what this means for future cases, precedent here. Does a verdict like this deter future potential witnesses in similar cases?
I think it definitely does. A verdict like this does deter victims and witnesses from coming forward. I think when you're talking about when the perpetrator is one of who has power, who has money, who had the key to the city, I think victims are looking at it, wait, if the prosecution gave it all they had and they went after him and they still didn't find him guilty, what about little old me? What about just regular perpetrator from down the block? What's going to happen in that type of case? So I think this is a huge deterrent for victims.
And Brian, I'm out of time, but I quickly...
And y'all got to realize, too, other court trials and hearings, we've been side-eyeing some of those lately, too. The Karen Reed found not guilty. There was another verdict. People were kind of questioning. So kind of, there's something going on. Many people say, with all these trials, was it a distraction? With all these trials coming out around the same time, was it a distraction? Even in regards to the K's and the J's, her situation happened years ago, and she had a trial around this time. Why? And there's a lot going on in the world, and I do shorts regarding that sometimes, but we will see what happens with the jurors. If they're going to do interviews, if they're going to write books, if they're going to do an interview together. How they came to this decision, what made them decide, will they be general? Or were they saying, just didn't see it because the girls seemed happy to still go back? Let's continue. Fair use. So this comes into play, y'all. Tell people how you really feel. If they would have told him how they really felt, some of this situation wouldn't have went that way. Remember how people were like, oh, happy birthday. Oh, happy holidays. Oh, I still got love for you. Because remember, Cassie also said the same thing. And, you know, I feel bad for what she went through. I do. I think it's unacceptable what he did to her in front of that elevator when if he was asking for his phone, all he would have said is, please hand me my phone. But for them to not do one, very interesting. And I'm okay with it being blurry, you guys, because YouTube is really funny about stuff. So you can see where it's saying not guilty, not guilty, guilty, not guilty, guilty. So let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Want to touch on the way this case was brought has been criticized from the beginning. The actual charges they brought, the fact that it was a federal trial and so on. Walk me through that part of it. And do you think there are any legal lessons learned there?
I think there are legal lessons in terms of how to bring this case. I think for federal prosecutors, they've used the Rico statute in very creative ways. If you want to talk about R. Kelly, if you want to talk about Donald Trump, there have been people who have been in the spotlight who have bemoaned and said that this is not how the statute is meant to be. And I think this might be one of the first major setbacks in this use of the statute in this kind of new wave. And I think this is going to be, agreeing with what Bernardo said, but I'll add on to a reevaluation of how do we define RICO going forward? Who fits into a RICO? What is a criminal enterprise? And are we going to open or...
So were they wrong just making it solely about him? Were they wrong making it solely about him and not making this about a total enterprise? You ain't by yourself. They said he don't even like making his own breakfast, you know, putting out his stuff in the morning. So did they make an error in how they presented it? Many people feel how they presented it is their fault, and this is why they got the verdict they got. And many people question things that happened, people that didn't take the stand, questions, them showing and them talking about oil for weeks because they were trying to push that. But they needed to be more focused on the bodyguards, the drivers, you know, the assistant saying we set it up. We didn't know what was going on. Oh, you knew what was going on because you had to clean it up. And then they said they wore gloves. You knew what was going on because you had to clean it up. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Close off how we now progress or move forward in terms of evaluating should we use this statute for these different types of enterprises.
All right, Rena, Brian, Bernarda, Kelly, thank you all.
Many people are shocked.
And big thanks to Erica Tursky, who again has been at that courthouse from the very beginning. Also, for more on today's verdict, catch the ABC.
Many people are shocked in their boots. Shocked. Shocked, I say. That's the only reason why I turned around. Had a good old time yesterday and had a good old time this morning.
Live news program. More Americans watch. Selena Gomez.
But you guys, you know what? For some of us, there's a relief that this part is over. I ain't even gonna lie to you. This has not been easy. Some people haven't, you know, some of my favorite content creators weren't feeling well. They were ill. They felt ill. Sometimes they couldn't get to the courtroom. We get it. We get it. So let's get into, hold on one second. Fair use reaction clip. One of my favorite law crimes.
The Mann Act, guilty on those 2 counts, but that's it, not guilty on the rest. Candace Kelly, you have been outstanding to be with us throughout the morning here, especially hopping on with the breaking news of this verdict. Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And now let's bring in Elizabeth Milner. She is live outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Elizabeth, I will hand you the ball. What was it like to be in the courtroom? Take us inside the moment.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me tell you something, Chris. The moment was it was the moment that everyone's been waiting for. And I literally had to go count by count by count, just writing out, you know, what was it going to be? And so obviously count 1 being not guilty, count 2 being not guilty.
Okay, she's about to go through the counts, everyone. Let's listen. Fair use reaction clip.
And count 4 being not guilty. The only guilties were for count 3 and count 5, that being transportation to engage in prostitution.
The
Mann Act. And so I will say this, Chris, that whenever the verdict was being read out loud, that Timmy and Sean Combs were holding hands, like clasping hands very much together during the verdict. There was an audible exclaim coming out from the gallery, that being Sean Combs' family, that being other people who were just sitting from members of the public, because obviously all of us in the press were just writing everything down, that there was very much an exclaim that came out when count 2 and count 4 were read out loud, but also count 1. Obviously, those were the charges that Sean Combs was acquitted of, and a lot of people were like, yes. I saw him turn around in his seat at the defense table to tell his family he's coming home. His family they were crying tears of happiness, obviously. I remember I was speaking to Charlucci, one of Diddy's childhood friends, somebody who's been inside that courtroom every single day of trial, but also he was one to be attending some of those pre-trial hearings. He's been adamant that his really good friend is innocent. He's been adamant about this. He was the one also coming in with the free puff shirts. I asked him what were his thoughts after this verdict was read out loud, and he said, God is good. So obviously from the defense's side, the lawyers all hugging, they were shaking, they were crying. Timmy and Anna Maria Estebao, they literally hugged and cried while after the jury was dismissed, after they were taken back to the attorney room. There was an audible applause even for Mark Agnifilo, Mark the Shark. People were just standing up and clapping for him. And again, everyone, this wasn't just the Combs family that was doing this. This was also members of the public who were inside that courtroom. I saw that whenever the jury was still present, so I'm kind of going a little step back here, Chris, is that whenever the verdict was read and he saw that it was only guilty for...
His attorneys are going to push for him to get released, so that will calm down those civil suits. Real talk. His attorneys are pushing to get him released because that will calm down those civil suits. Will some of them drop off? Will some of them continue? Should they continue? Do they even have proper evidence for the civil suits? Will he settle several of the civil suits? Or will he have to fight some of those civil suits in jail? Fair use reaction clip.
count 3 and 5, that he looked at the jury. And I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, because everything just kind of felt like a blur, but I think I'm remembering this correctly, I saw him mouth thank you to the jurors, or at least bare minimum do this to them. I saw that Justin's girlfriend was crying. Shapiro was nodding over at Sean Combs. Sean Combs again told his family that he was coming home. And I did make it a note right here, Chris, I just got to it, that obviously Sean Combs was thanking the jury, looked at the jury whenever they were leaving for the day. So obviously, from the defense's side, obviously those were people who were very much Team Combs, were just very, very pleased with the verdict, to the point where Mark Agnifilo made a pretty strong and compelling bail application argument too. Obviously, we don't know if Sean Combs is going to be released today, possibly pending sentencing for the counts that he was found guilty on, but we'll see once those letters come in later this afternoon and we hear arguments from both sides. But the family, I will tell you, Chris, they're very happy, even with 2 of the counts coming back as guilty.
Yeah, and with just how concerned it seemed that Sean Combs was yesterday for the partial verdict, to then have this unanimous verdict and what he was found not guilty of. Elizabeth Vilner, thank you. And now I want to bring in Law and Crime CEO and founder Dan Abrams. Dan, thank you for taking the time to be with us. What is your reaction, especially on this count 1 racketeering conspiracy, Sean Combs not guilty?
Look, this is a win for Sean Combs. This is a big victory. No matter how you look at this case, there was almost no chance he was going to be acquitted of the transportation for the purposes of prostitution counts. Now, when you looked at all the evidence, all the records, all the documents with regard to those counts, it was hard to imagine how he would have been acquitted of those charges. The fact that he was acquitted of all of the most serious charges is a big win. And let's talk for a moment about the racketeering charge. What?
Let's get the likes up, you guys. There's 31 likes. Still, yeah, Paris, big changes are going to have to come, because this, and I see other pages, the likes are up. They say hit the like, and they hit them. They be at 300-400 likes. But they do be having like 300 in the chat, but still, we got to get the likes up, you guys. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Yesterday, they were so incapable of reaching a unanimous verdict. They said that people, I forget the exact wording about the language that they used to talk about the divide on the jury, and then they come in, and within an hour, they've got a unanimous verdict on it. It just shows you that judges sending the jurors back can work. Jurors will tell the judge, we're hopelessly deadlocked. The judge will say, go back. Well, in this case, it was pretty easy. But look, headline is, this is a big win for Sean Combs.
Absolutely. Unpersuadable is what they said yesterday in the 4 o'clock hour before they go home. And then 9:52 this morning, less than an hour into deliberations, they have a unanimous verdict. Dan, what was it, in your opinion, Cassie Ventura's testimony? I remember Elizabeth talking about just how emotional it was in the courtroom when she was on the stand, and yet not guilty is the verdict the jury finds. What is it about the defense that apparently spoke to the jury where they felt that she was not a victim of sex trafficking?
Right. I mean, look, you needed coercion and force, right? And I think that there was enough consensual activity, consensual relationships between Jane and Cassie, such that the jurors didn't feel that there was proof beyond a reasonable doubt that this was sex trafficking, even though you only needed a single instance, right? As the judge told the jurors and the prosecutors told the jurors, if they were convinced of just one, even if the rest...
And how's that possible when people were traveling? The distraction, for some, this is not making any sense, but it is what it is. Fair use reaction clip. What do y'all think about what the jurors' decision was? Are you surprised? Are you not surprised? And many kept saying they don't see the racketeering. They don't see it. And many people said they saw it. A lot of attorneys said we see it. But will the jury see it? Let's continue. Fair use. Let's get the likes up. You guys, we got 34. We got about 118 in the building. Can you please double tap the screen? Let's get the likes to 100. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
To the more consensual, that would have been enough. Jury didn't believe that existed. Look, this is a classic, I would say, compromise verdict. But when you view it as a compromise, it doesn't quite do it justice at how big a win it is for Sean Combs.
And Elizabeth, as you're standing outside the courthouse right now, I know we just had video of members of Diddy's family leaving. But this was not a trial where you saw like a Luigi Mangione crowd of supporters outside every day. What are you seeing right now with the news of these verdicts coming in?
Yeah, well, as you guys can see behind me, I don't know if you can see behind me but we see a Cadillac Escalade or a Ford Escalade, I can't name what
cars, that is. But you see a large black SUV behind me. We have two vans behind me. The two Sprinter vans are obviously going to be holding in the Combs family. And all I can see right now, Chris, is just a crowd of people, both press and the public, just crowding around. Their cell phones are out, their cameras are out. Some people are standing on what looks to be ladders, or at least kind of those metal barricades. And I see obviously some in security, some even kind of standing in the roadway. I hope they're not necessarily blocking any traffic, but I did hear an audible kind of explain when the family did come out. Obviously, everybody who's watching at home, Sean Combs is not coming outside of the courtroom at this moment right now. We do not see him or anything like that. He's still back in a holding cell while both sides kind of work out what they're going to be saying in their arguments later today about Sean Combs' bail application. But from what I could see, the SUV, the Sprinter van, it's crowded. It is a whole bunch of people really probably trying to get a glimpse of the Combs family, get their reaction after this verdict was read out loud today. And so it's really kind of a pretty packed scene outside there, as people are just waiting to see what the family's reaction is, as they are pretty pleased with today's verdict. Obviously, they would have liked probably for him to be acquitted on all counts, but in terms of just the verdict that was rendered today, it seems like the family's pretty pleased.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, Chris, I was just going to say that I think the answer to your question about why there's not this sort of groundswell of support out there is because he's admitting, his lawyer's admitting he did bad things, right? This isn't one of these cases where it's a question of did he do it or didn't he do it? We know he did it. We know he did really bad things here. The question is, did those really bad things fall into the legal definition of sex trafficking or racketeering? And the jury believes the answer is no. But that doesn't mean that he's going to get the kind of groundswell of support that someone who people believe is literally innocent, falsely accused, might get in a different kind of case.
And you've even seen it, Dan. I know you covered the OJ trial. I mean, OJ Simpson found not guilty, but no one up until his death had, for the most part, pretty glowing things to say about OJ Simpson in hindsight of how that played out, even though there was a not guilty verdict. I'm just thinking of OJ. I think of Johnny Cochran, one of the great defenses of all time. As you've covered a lot of high-profile cases, where does the defense that Sean Combs got in this case rank?
Let's get the likes up, you guys. Let's get the likes up. Please double tap the screen. 123 in the building. Please subscribe. Let's get the likes up. Let's get the likes to 100. Let's get the likes to 100. Thank you. We're at 37. We're at 37. I'm giving you guys a clear understanding of what is really going on. We're at 37. Please double tap the screen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, it was a very good defense, but they also had good legal arguments to make. I mean, they had the fact that Cassie and Jane were in these long-term relationships with him. They had the text messages, which were very positive and at times glowing and loving, which I think helped him a lot. You had the fact that racketeering is a complicated case where you need more than one person, you need more than one crime, etc. So it's not really quite apples to apples, right? In a murder case as you had here.
And then just lastly,
yeah, go ahead,
I'll let you go. Long Crime founder and CEO Dan Abrams. Always good to have you on. Thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Great to be here. Great job, guys. Appreciate it.
Many people are surprised at the verdict.
Coverage in the courtroom too. Love it.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, I will go to you right now. Let's break down these arguments here, because you have Diddy's defense is saying that he should go home today. That this is not guilty on the majority of the counts, the most serious counts. He should walk out of here. The prosecution is not saying that. As you take a live look at the media that is outside of the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. What can we expect today when it comes to the arguments for what happens next to Sean Combs?
Well, what we can expect is that the defense is going to really be adamant about letting Sean Combs out today. He has a lot of money to post what they have been proposed as a $1 million bail, have some of his family members be able to kind of co-sign off that, and for him to just walk out of that courthouse today. I have to kind of really emphasize that today. He did not want to go back to MDC. Whenever the judge was like, I am sure that Sean Combs doesn't want to go back to MDC, he was shaking his head over at the defense table. A lot of people were kind of chuckling in the gallery today. But as far as just like the arguments that the defense initially made, Mark Agnifilo making these arguments, as his voice was shaking a little bit, probably because he was pretty happy with the verdict. He stood up and he was like, he should be released on conditions. He should be able to return to Star Island in Florida. And Mark Agnifilo saying that we still have his passport, that being Tini Garagos and Mark Agnifilo, but if he is released on bail conditions, that they should be able to return that passport over to pretrial services. They really were talking about how Sean Combs has been acquitted on sex trafficking, on Rico conspiracy. They even pointed out that his plane is currently in Maui, Hawaii, and that he doesn't have access to his plane. And so Mark Agnifilo says,
was that a plot plan too?
To the bond again, if they were proposing $1 million, he should be released today.
And their proposal was that Sean Combs could walk out of the courtroom and that his travel be limited to Florida, Los Angeles, and New York City. Whereas the government opposed that application. Maureen Comey making these arguments on behalf of the prosecution. The government was saying that Mark Agnicola was really kind of downplaying Sean Combs' conviction because everyone, just remember, he is still convicted on 2 counts. Now, again, we have to kind of emphasize being transportation to engage in prostitution, also known as the Mann Act. The government also pointing out there's been extensive testimony regarding drugs throughout this trial. They also point back to the day of his arrest or the evening of his arrest when he was caught at the hotel with drugs inside his hotel room, red lighting equipment, something that they say kind of alludes to that there might have been a hotel night or a freak-off occurring at the time that he was arrested. The prosecution also pointing out that his conviction suggests that he should be detained and that the defendant should be detained until sentencing. And so the judge asked, do you have any kind of case law about someone being held on a Mann Act charge pending sentencing? Maureen Comey.
Have you noticed the judge love asking for case law? I've noticed that. Fair use reaction clip.
Says for the most part, it had to relate to children, and so she didn't have anything in relation to adults being transported over state lines. So she's going to look up that case law. Obviously, the defense is going to come back. They're going to have their arguments, probably kind of what we had heard earlier. So they're going to take a few hours to kind of work everything out. They're going to send back a letter or an email, and then we'll all kind of reconvene early this.
So let's see what the judge says. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting the channel. Like, comment, and subscribe. I thank you, Paris, for being here, supporting me. Copyright disclaimer: under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships, and research. Fair use is use permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All comments are alleged, in our opinion, and for entertainment purposes only. Focus on healthy, safe relationships. Be around people that's loving, kind, and respectful. Go back and look at some of the trials that's happened over the last 5 months. Go back and look at that video in regards to the young lady talking about Diddy's attorneys and what he said and how it might have changed the way they thought. Thanks for being here, everyone. I appreciate you. If he gets released, I may or may not come back. I might do a short regarding it. We got to get the likes up, though. I be spending a lot of time. And trust and believe. Trust and believe. Things have to get better. Real talk. Have a great day, everyone. Goodbye.